Yeah, 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 yeah. Look. Never switch on the homies in the day ones. They didn't wanna open doors, so we made some.
All right, welcome back, folks. See, the whole gang is here today. Thank you guys for joining us today. As you guys see, we have a very special guest joining us today. We would like to officially welcome, and I wish I had confetti and clapping sounds, our first interview on the channel. Well, actually, our second interview, we had a panel interview, but our first solo interview. And so thank you so much for joining us today. So we want to say, obviously, congratulations, on your win. You had a tough, crowded race. So congratulations to you so much on your win. So how are you feeling today?
Feeling good. As you mentioned, got through a pretty tough primary race in a crowded field, and that felt amazing. But now, actually, today is, and I'm not sure when this airs, but it's the day that we're recording this is the beginning of a special session. So I jumped out of one fire and into another one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And so, like was mentioned before, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for your public service. So, in the interest of time, just to give people a little background of who you are, in the interest of time, can you give us like a synopsis on how a microbiologist such as yourself decided to become an elected official and why you decided to enter politics?
Yeah, because the truth is, I had no idea that I was going to get into politics until it happened. My background's in microbiology, PhD in microbiology. I am a super science nerd. I love science. I still do. Being in politics has not changed that at all. In fact, it probably has made me love science a little bit more. That
Mm-hmm.
said, back in 2016, I saw a need. And that's what propelled me to decide to run for office in 2018. I really wanted there to be people in the room that were going to stand up for science, that were going to stand up for facts, that were going to use evidence to drive their decision making. And on the one hand, I was like, who can we get to do that? And then
Mm-hmm.
eventually I looked in the mirror and I said, Jasmine, you can do that. You can be that person. And I was like, and if anything, give people a choice. So at the time that I decided to run for office, the person that I ran against was of the opposite party and they were running unopposed. And so they had no opposition. So I jumped into this race, one, to give the people of my district an actual democratic choice, and two, to inject some science into the policymaking process. And that's how I got here. And then once I got in, I realized it really is good to have some science voices in the room. I think a lot of diverse perspectives in the room is important to the policymaking process.
I definitely agree, Dr. Clark. And I would like to kind of visit your initiatives while you've been in this legislative space. What are some of the things and some of the initiatives that you're most proud of as serving as a legislator?
Yeah, so when I first came in, interestingly, I had a constituent that was really concerned about sex education in the state of Georgia. And so when I first came in, one of the things that I wanted to do was to modernize sex education in Georgia to catch up with the rest of the country. We're one of the few countries that does, not countries, we're one of the few states that doesn't require sex education to be medically accurate, which means that some places can use things like religion based sex education or values based sex education instead of science and health based sex education. And that can be a disservice. We have plenty of data out there, global data out there, that shows
Mhm.
that that type of sex education can actually have the the opposite impact of
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
goal of sex education, which is to inform and let the students have, make informed decisions about what's going on with their bodies and just knowing what's going on with their bodies. Additionally, since I've been here, things that have been really, really important to me, reproductive health has always been a very important thing to me, and specifically addressing our Black maternal mortality issue here in the state of Georgia. I think one of the reasons why this is really important to me is because, one, I'm a Black mother, but also I have lots of peers who are either just now entering into motherhood or thinking about it, and I am concerned that the state of Georgia is one of the least safe places to give birth as a Black woman, and I wanted to change that. And so I've done lots of initiatives with different groups that are that work on maternal mortality or just Black maternal health in general. And then another thing that I have worked on, I'll just do like one more, and this one is more of a win that I was able to get. So we piloted AP African American Studies in the state of Georgia. It was a few years ago. I don't want to call out years because I don't want to be inaccurate. And after the pilot, it was up to our state school superintendent to now like say, okay, we will allow AP African American Studies to be taught in Georgia schools, and we will fund that course the same way we fund all the other AP courses. Well, kind of sneakily, right before the school year started, the state school superintendent was like, yeah, we're not going to fund that. And we were like, nope, you're not going to be able to just like, hide the fact that you're trying to not fund basically Black history for our students. And so we fought back against that. And we actually won that battle. And so those are a few things that I'm really proud of that I was able to do while here in the legislature.
So
Awesome.
that's
Awesome.
obviously today is it's like history in the making. It's almost like a rewind of history. I know how I felt when I learned the news of this special session being called today to consider redistricting in Georgia. And I'm just curious, especially as you said, you had just come off such a high of winning your primary election without a runoff. And I'm sure, continuing to, look forward to November. And so to get called back, for this, I want to know, how did you feel when you first learned that you guys were getting called back into special session? And just in general, how are you feeling today as you guys enter into that session?
So I will say the initial feeling was like a gut punch. It's like one of those things where you take 3 steps forward and then it feels like you end up falling 5 steps back. In this case, we're talking about a few decades back. The truth of the matter is the Calais versus Louisiana decision came down, and it was a decision that was about that very specific thing. There was no mandate in that decision that other states have to now change their maps, but many southern states saw that as an opportunity. We no longer have to make sure that the Black people that live in our state have access to choosing their representation. And so, on the one hand, you want to believe that a place like Georgia, as diverse as it is, I live in Gwinnett County, as diverse as it is, and it's, we have 2 Democratic senators and things like that. You want to believe that we would be above that. And then our governor calls this special session. And I think the thing that really bothered me about that was that we are going into a special session. And to be clear, special sessions are not free. This is costing the taxpayer money. We are going into this special session for this. Meanwhile, the governor, when he did his budget line item vetoed several things that I feel are really harmful to our communities. Services for homeless veterans, services I got to do my dance to get my lights to turn back on. Services for foster care children, Sunbucks, which is extra money for SNAP benefits for children who can have access to food in the summertime when they're not getting meals at school.
Mhm.
All of these things, those things got line item vetoed in
Wow.
order to give property tax relief and income tax relief. Um, and then we call a special session where we're now spending money to redraw maps to dilute the power of certain voters. And it feels like a slap in the face. How can you say we didn't have enough money for these things, these very important things, these very important Georgians, but we got money for this, what I consider BS. Today, how am I feeling? I feel energized. The Democratic Caucus, the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, many different organizations, NAACP, ACLU, like People's Agenda, Black Voters Matter, so many groups. And I'm, to be clear, I don't want anybody to be mad at me. I might have left off some groups. I can't name them all, but because so many groups
Yeah.
have come together, and I feel energized and I feel prepared. So we're going to fight back however we can. We don't know what's going to happen. We have not seen a map. They have not shown us anything. This is not the way the democratic process should happen. But altogether, we are ready for whatever they throw at us.
Thank you for emphasizing that it's not a mandate, because that's actually one of the things that I pointed out in our recent panel, because a lot of people thought that the maps in the South changed because the Supreme Court decision mandated them. So it's like, no, the Supreme Court very rarely makes those type of like affirmative decisions. What they pretty much do is they'll strike down a case and sort of leave it up to the states. But in essence, it almost, it still has the same impact. It's one of those things we talk about in the law where, like, you know, you're not creating this, or it looks on paper like you're not intending it, but in application, it does exactly that. It acts exactly as if you were to have created a mandate. So thank you so much for emphasizing that for the people watching, so that they understand the states did not have to make this decision.
Not at all.
Mhm.
And they still don't. Like, we could still not do this. So I want to be clear, like, we could go through this special session, we could get in. There are some things that we do need to take care of. So, for example, the voting machines in our state technically become illegal on July 1st because of a law that got passed 2 years ago, but then no one actually did anything to make the law, like, to get us in compliance with the law that we made. So this is a situation of our own making, and not I did not vote for it, but a situation of their own making to get us to where we are. So we probably still would have needed to have a special session anyway, but we don't need to have one to redraw maps. And I also want to just really quickly point out, we do a census every 10 years. The maps that they are saying that they are drawing are supposed to go into effect in 2028. That is 2 years before the next census. There is a lot that has changed in the state of Georgia between 2020, which is the data that they will use to draw the maps, and 2028, when these maps should be enacted, should we actually pass any maps. I personally do not believe that these maps would even pass constitutional muster for one person, one vote. It just doesn't seem like it takes into account just how much population change, demographic shifts, just people shifts have happened over the last 8 years.
So thank you for that, Dr. Clark. Can you also explain what's at stake if this redistricting legislation passes?
So what can be at stake is basically they want to dilute the power of certain voters in the state of Georgia. And I want to be clear, because they will say, no, that's not what we're doing. When the decision came down, they jumped for joy and said, yes, we can now discriminate against Black people again. Like, I'm not even being like, I'm not even exaggerating. I mean, they might not have said those exact words, but that was my interpretation, because they had been drawing maps that had to consider that you cannot discriminate. You cannot racially discriminate against
Mhm.
people. Your maps cannot have the effect of racial discrimination. Why? Because in our nation's history, we actually have a history of doing that. And so we have to put in the law, you cannot do that. And then they interpreted the Calais decision to say, yeah, now you can do it again.
Yeah,
And I am like baffled just how excited they got about that.
yeah.
So the impact of the passage of these maps is to dilute the power of Black voters. We've seen it in Tennessee. You take Memphis, which is the Blackest population center of
Mhm.
Tennessee, and they sliced Memphis up into three pieces, making the congressional districts almost 200 miles long so that they could get partisan maps. And in the process, they cracked, this actual redistricting term, they cracked up the Black representation and Black individuals in the state of Tennessee's ability to choose their representation. That is what is at stake here in the state of Georgia as well. And that's what we'll fight back against.
Mhm.
So yeah, so you talked about the energy that you're feeling today, going back into this special session. How can you describe? I know that it's been a call of action within different groups that you talked about, but also just within um, I guess our different demographics, brown and black people coming together to know what's going on and stand up because people power matters, right? And so, how can you describe the feeling inside the Capitol today? Because we urged everybody to go to the Capitol to just, be informed with what's going on. So, how can you describe the feeling right now?
I feel like there is a multi generational energy
Yeah.
of we have to fight. So
Mhm.
we have people who were literally fighting back in the 60s,
Mhm.
joining people who are just babies, and like respectfully speaking,
Gen Z.
um, all of us together,
Yeah.
and we are leaning on the lessons of the past. We have a prototype of how to fight back. We've actually had to do this fight before, and we actually have leaders that were there that can coach us through it. So I will tell you, the energy on our side is like, we are ready. Like,
Yeah.
tell us what you got, show us what you got.
Yeah.
So we'll be having press conferences and rallies, and we're having lunches, and people are here, and we are in solidarity together, saying we will not let this stand. We will fight back. And so that's the energy here. It's there is a very high energy, at least on our side. Now I can't say what's going on the other side, but I'll say on our side, there is an energy of like, put me in the game. Let's go.
Mhm.
We're ready.
I will say it's all eyes on Georgia. I was really surprised. I was watching Native Land Pod with Angela Rye, Bakari Sellers, and Andrew Gillum, and they spoke about Georgia's special session. And just listening to Toure also mentioned it. Just a lot of journalists, national journalists, have brought attention to what's going on. So I will say that it's definitely all eyes on Georgia. And it's interesting you talked about this intergenerational and how we have the blueprint plan for it. But I think my question is, and I don't even know if you can answer this, because I, as a scholar in this field in political science, have been thinking, like, how do we prevent having to that the next generation doesn't have to go through this cycle again? Like because it almost
Absolutely.
seems like we need a sort of steady plan, not a we get results, we get complacent, and then we go downhill, and then we have to rev
Absolutely.
up the engine again. Like, what can we do if just optimistically to prevent us from having to go through this cycle again?
I feel like one of the things that has happened is we have gotten comfortable with norms. Things happen, and then we all just agree, okay, we shouldn't do that anymore.
Mhm.
And, as long as cooler heads prevail, that can sustain for a little time until you get someone that's like, I don't care about that. If
Right.
if I don't have to, then I'm not going to.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so, oh, sorry, I do my dance again.
It's so funny. You were talking about budget today, and it's like all this energy. The budget is so tight. We got energy conserving lights, but we're spending all this money for.
And I feel like I'm like moving my hands, but I'm not close enough to the motion sensor. But no, what I think we have to do is actually codify things. We have to put things into law. And actually, to be clear, the Voting Rights Act is a law.
Yeah.
But we also have laws that are meant to strengthen that, or things that can strengthen and give it a little bit more oomph, such as the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And so, if we take all of that into account, like, I think we cannot be complacent and just assume that people are going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Most people will. We actually have to acknowledge that everybody ain't right. And if one of those people that ain't right all of a sudden gets in a leadership position, we're all in trouble. And we need to have guardrails. We need to have safety. So I say this to say, I appreciate what was done during the civil rights movement. And I'm sitting in the seat that I'm sitting in now because of people that came before me. There are people who got elected and they wouldn't even let them come in the Capitol,
Right.
So this fight has had to happen. But I think this fight happening now is a reminder that unfortunately, freedom isn't free. We are going to have to continue to make sure that we fight for it and hold on to it, and we don't let it falter because you get people who don't have good intentions in leadership positions. And I don't know the answer to that other than recognizing that it's not something that will just always be there if we don't actually make sure that it's there.
So to your point, Dr. Clark, is there a such thing as putting in place these guardrails that you speak of in perpetuity?
That's what the law is supposed to be. And the interesting thing is that's what the law is supposed to be. This Supreme Court has gone a bit rogue in their interpretations of laws. So I do think that there are some things we need to think about when it comes to our Supreme Court. Is it time to expand it? It's been the same size for quite a while our nation's population has grown. Judicial circuits numbers have increased, all the different things. Maybe it's time that we also increase the number of seats on that Supreme Court and get a little bit more balance there. But again, I think law is we actually have kind of like a template of how this is supposed to work. We make the laws are supposed to be what we are supposed to do. And the courts are not supposed to be out there making laws and changing laws and all this stuff. That's not their job. Their job is not to change Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Their job is to interpret Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. What they've done is interpret it to say it doesn't mean what it says. And unfortunately, that's how we get to where we are. I don't think it's going to be anything that happens. I don't think there's any one stopgap. I don't think we do this one thing and then everything will be fine for the rest of eternity. Unfortunately, we also need to make sure that our younger generations are paying attention to what we're doing now, the same way we are paying attention, or we're paying attention to what was being done by generations before us, so that if a time such as this comes again, they too have a prototype. They too have lessons that they can lean on and go to. And hopefully they too have people that they can stand arm in arm with, that have been in the fight, that can help them get through the next fight.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. We definitely want you to conserve your energy for today. So just one last question that I know has been on my mind, and we talked about it as a panel. There's been a general consensus nationwide. People have gotten frustrated with the Democratic Party's messaging. Some feeling like it is not meeting fire with fire. Some feeling like it's excluding, certain groups of people that like they want more inclusion, like, black male. There was this whole article that came out that said black male voters, when they were polled, felt like that they're neglected as a voting bloc. And so I just want to talk to you, especially as you head into, Congress, what advice would you give to your party, or what do you plan to do to help with that messaging? I mean, first, do you agree that the Democratic Party has a messaging issue? And then what do you think needs to be done to make that messaging stronger, to really, I think, strengthen the Democratic Party that seems to be, really, I think, suffering from a messaging, problem at this point?
I think the messaging issue is one that's going to always exist because we are a big tent party, which means that there is a lot more messages that people want to hear under our same tent.
That makes sense.
So as Democrats, there are going to be groups that are going to say, hey, you're not speaking loud enough about my stuff, or you're not speaking loud enough about my stuff, or you're not speaking loud enough about my stuff, or you're giving them way too much attention, or why is it always black girl magic? Why is it never black boy magic? Why is it, there are all these different things that are always going to be a symptom of being inclusive. When you are inclusive, that means that you got a lot more message to give.
Yeah.
I will say, I feel the other side of the aisle doesn't have that issue. They get to be pretty homogenous in their messaging, and so it makes it a little bit easier. Now, will I say that do all Republicans agree with every single Republican message? Probably not. But again, there's a lot more homogeneity on their side than there is on our side. We are just we're a big mixture. That said, I do think one of the things we have to do is make sure that we're always bringing people in and we're listening, and we are not telling people, we don't, you don't know what you're talking about. That's never the message. If I'm telling you I have an issue in any relationship, whether it's with my party, whether it's with a family, whether it's with a partner, if I'm telling you I have an issue and you're like, yeah, that's not going to go over very well. So I do think that inclusive messaging means listening and making sure we're taking these things into account. And I think moving forward, we also need to make sure that we have diverse voices speaking for the Democratic Party instead of using just the same voices all the time that are saying the same things, that are ruffling feathers, and we're just never adjusting. So I think overall, the messaging problem that we have is a problem because we are such an inclusive party, and I would not trade inclusivity for a message that works for whoever decides to stay because we pushed everybody out. I don't want that. I want us to all be able to come in. But I think we just have to acknowledge that the more groups you have in the room, I mean, it could be politics, it could be ice cream. If we had 10 different people in the room, we say, all right, what flavor of ice cream or what flavor of pizza are we getting today? You're not going to get consensus. There's going to be conversation about it. And I think that's kind of where we are as a party. Something we'll have to work on. It's going to be a ever-changing thing. That's something that it won't, similar to what I said earlier, it's not something where you can just like do this one thing and it's going to fix everything.
Yeah, that's very insightful. I mean, even as a political scientist, I never really thought about it that way. I don't think a lot of political scientists have thought about it that way, just knowing, I'm always in the literature, like a true nerd. And that's a very good point, that when you are such an inclusive group and you have so much under your tent, there's always going to sort of be an issue with messaging. And so I always like to say the democratic process is a journey. It's not a destination,
Yes.
I always like to say that. And so I don't know if Micah, if you have anything else for Dr. Clark before we let her go and fight the good fight. It looks like Mita had to go, but Micah, if you had anything else you wanted to say to Dr. Clark before we let her go.
Dr. Clark, I just want to say thank you so much. I have seen your work over the past couple of years and fighting the good fight. And so I have no doubt that that's going to be, done, and that you'll continue this work. But I just want to say I appreciate you mentioning the different generations, because that is important. Noticing that it's a lot of young people getting involved with politics, and a part of what I care about and what some of my values are is getting the young people politically involved, because it will take us to change a lot of things that is going on right now, and make it better for our generation that's coming up next. And so I really appreciate you for acknowledging us and allowing us to be in the fight with y'all, because of course it's going to take all of us to come together. But like I said, thank you for joining us today. And, I know we have a busy couple of days, but we're here and we appreciate you.
Yeah, Mita, do you want to say anything before we let Dr. Clark go? We know we lost you for a minute there. Do you want to say anything or to Dr. Clark before we let her go fight the good fight?
Yes, just thanks again for joining us. And, more power to you and to all of those who are of the thought process of, getting the job done for the community. And so I liked your pizza analogy as far as it relates to being so inclusive. And so I know just for me, it's one of those things you can be inclusive, but also kind of condense at the same time. We might not be able to decide on what pizza we want, but we need to eat.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those things, we have to kind of come together and just, kind of sometimes, condense it into just humane and human rights. So, and sometimes, so just thanks again for your insight, all the hard work. And yeah, I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you
so much, Dr. Clark. Can you tell the people where they can find you? I know you're very active on social media. Can you give your socials? Yeah.
All socials is at Jasmine, the number 4 GA.
Okay, perfect. Dr. Clark, this was wonderful. We thank you so much for joining us today, and we wish you all the best of luck as you enter into history making today. And so you will probably see Mita and Micah around the Capitol today. They're going to be talking to a few of your colleagues on both sides of the aisle, and that will also be, on the channel just for informative purposes. So thank you so much, and best of luck today.
All right, bye y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day.
See you soon.
Never switch on the homies in the day ones. They didn't wanna open doors, so we made some.